Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for being here with us for another great edition of Retirement Redefined with Brad Gotto and Fiat Wealth Management. I am Bill Seller, and he's Brad Gotto. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, really good to see you too.
Yeah,
I'm doing well. It's that time of year where it's easy to be doing well. The weather's good, treating it's right.
Yep.
So
Yeah, nothing to complain about. Got my coffee. I am ready to go.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I still maintain that the coffee bean, one of the Lord's better inventions. Um, Prove me wrong.
It
So,
used to be thought of as, well, we don't need to get a history of coffee, but I like coffee so much I know the history of coffee bean. We'll
you
just
know
say
the
that.
history, huh? Let me give you Brad's number here to get you started. It is 952-522-3868. We're here to talk about how to get to and how to get through retirement. And when you hear something on the show that is going to raise a question, or maybe you're looking at retiring and not sure how that's going to work, I want you to reach out to the good folks at Fiat Wealth Management. Get in touch with Brad and his team of highly trained fiduciaries as you're getting ready to get set for retirement. That is a lot of years ahead of you, according to the latest research. Coming up today, we are going to talk about a few things like Social Security just hit a historic milestone. We will talk about that in a while. And the new retirement equation. More Roth, more record savings, more options. We're going to find out what that means with Brad as well. But I wanted to get started with something that when I first started working with you, I thought it was fascinating. You wrote a book. It's called Spending Money and Having Fun, Your Practical Guide to a Fearless Retirement, because you were finding people didn't want to spend the money they'd saved, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily that they don't want to. Maybe they do. It's just they don't. And it's not necessarily based out of the fact that they just don't want to. It's just they're fearful for whatever reason, and they don't know how to spend it. They don't know how much they can spend. They don't know what's appropriate, and so for all those reasons, they just don't.
Well, let's say that's me, and I come in and sit down and talk to you, and I say, "Look, man, I know I got no more money coming in. I'm really worried about." What do you do to make people feel better? How do you approach that with your clients?
I mean, at the highest of levels, we create the permission that they need to do it. There's the old saying that there's no true freedom in life without boundaries. And the story or analogy I like to use there is if you're going to go swimming in the ocean, but you have this deathly afraid of sharks. You're like, well, I know that sharks exist in the ocean, but I don't know where they're at in the ocean, so I'm just not going to swim in the ocean. So now you can't. But if I put up a set of buoys and said inside of these buoys, there's no sharks. Now that's a boundary, and a lot of people think that's a limitation, but inside of that limitation, I actually just created freedom for you to know where you can and can't do the things that you want to do. And so planning is what it comes down to. Planning creates the permission for the people to be able to do things. One of those is be able to spend your money. And so it's not always true, Bill, but the number one reason that I've found that the average retiree isn't living the lifestyle that they want to live, or that they're holding back, or that their wealth is actually continuing to accumulate in retirement, they're not spending any of it, isn't necessarily because that was the goal. It's because they don't feel they have the permission to do it. And they don't know what that looks like. In fact, if you think about it, Bill, for 40 years, all you do is the opposite of that. You saved and you saved and you saved and you saved, and you watch the account balances go up and up and up and up over time. And so it's kind of like being a little kid. If you're taught that every time you touch a stove, you're going to get burnt, you're not going to touch the stove. And so when somebody like me comes into the picture and starts saying, hey, you know what we should do? We should touch the stove. People are like, what? No, I can't do that. And so it's really hard. The behavioral aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it is really, really hard. And then it does come down to numbers after that of, okay, if we can get over the mental hurdle of actually living off of the money that you saved, then the question becomes, well, how much? And I know that's something we're going to talk about later in the show as well. So I don't want to I don't want to kind of get in front of us here, but it is creating permission for people and creating those boundaries so that they feel comfortable doing it.
Okay. All right. I guess, yeah, that makes sense because, people work really hard, like you said, to put all that money away. And then when they realize they're not getting a paycheck anymore, it can be very scary. So if you're heading towards retirement and you want to make sure you're going to be able to live the way that you want to and hopefully do the things that you want to do in retirement, that's why you should set up a meeting with Brad and his team at Fiat. Number again is 952-522 3868. And when you go in to visit with him and you get that complimentary retirement consultation, you'll also get a copy of the book. So you can find out more about how it's okay to go spend your money in retirement and have a good time. Don't be afraid. 952-522-3868 is the number.
Yeah, and Bill,
So,
before we move to the next topic,
yeah,
can I just say, like, that's what the book is it's the permissions. It's the different permissions that a lot of people that I've found. What are kind of like the top 5, 10 things that people need permission for or on to be able to feel comfortable spending their money in retirement? We just cover all those topics in the book.
okay. It's a good read. So make sure you set that appointment, go visit with them, get your copy of the book, and start getting your retirement plan together at Fiat. So if you looked at your 401k lately, maybe this spring, and things didn't look like you'd hoped, you weren't alone. Market turbulence early in the year knocked the average 401k down about 4%. But there's a lot more to this story, right, Brad? I mean, that's very easy to just look at that and kind of panic.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to this. Anybody you work with come in and go, hey, what's going on with this? Or what can I do? Or
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, especially if that's the first time you've opened it in a while, you open, a couple months go by, you looked at it at the end of 2025, it hit the highest balance it probably ever hit at that point in time, not only because the market was up, but if you're still working and contributing money to it at the same time, when it goes up fast because you've got new money coming in and you've got market gains on top of it. Obviously, Q1 was a bit of a damper. Now here we sit, we're almost halfway through the year, and it's back. It's fine. Everybody's okay. But there's that moment in time in there. And that happens. It's interesting to me with the S&P when you look at it over time, Bill. We all know that the S&P averages 9-10%, kind of depending on how you choose to look at those numbers. Include the dividends, don't include them. What time frame are you looking at? Last 50 years, last 100 years? Let's just call it 10 for ease of our conversation today. If it was 10%, they just expect to get 10% every year, which is interesting because it almost never hits the average, number one. So although the average is 10, it almost never does 10. It always usually does better than that or worse. It very rarely just does 10. And then on top of that, the average year, doesn't happen every year, but the average year, somewhere in the year, there's a 10% pullback. So when you look at like snap the chalk line, January 1 to December 31st, if you're going to average 10% a year, that feels really good. Mm-hmm. And when you think about like your house as an investment, your house can go up in value. But one thing that you and I don't do, Bill, every single day is go out every day or 252 days a year, maybe not every day. The market's open 252 days a year and get a new home assessment, a new valuation of your home 252 different times. And if you did, you might freak out a little bit. Be like, oh, yeah, right. My home doesn't actually go up in value every day. In fact, there's days, depending on how the market looks, it might go down in value. But the reason that the average lay investor gets the mentality that the market not the market, your home goes up over time is because they're only looking at it from the day they bought it to the day they go to sell it. And if that's 5 years or 10 years, over a 5 or 10 year period, the likelihood that your home went up in value is really high. It's not 100%, but it's really high. What's interesting is the stock market is the exact same thing. You look at it over a 5 or 10 year period, the likelihood that if you just closed your eyes and opened them again 5 or 10 years later, that you had more money than when you started is really high. Not 100%, but it's really high. But we don't do that. We look at it, some people, 252 days a year. They look at it every day that the market is open, or they close their eyes for a couple months, look at it again and go, shoot, it's down. But going back to my comment before, although the market averages, market being the S&P in my hypothetical example, 10% a year, it also averages a 10% pullback every year. Sometime in the middle of the year, between January 1st and December 31st, there's a 10% pullback in the market, in spite of the fact that by the end of the year, it's not only rebounded, it's rebounded back to a positive position. Those are just the averages. And so one of the things that you have to be able to do if you're going to be an investor is understand these things and be comfortable with that long game. Be comfortable with the volatility in between. In fact, I would argue, Bill, the volatility is an opportunity. Because if you're the investor that can just stay the course in when the volatility happens, there's going to be somebody else that can't. And that's where, it's not the only place you win, but that's one of the places you can win is when everybody else is freaking out and pulling out. If you can just stay the course, when the market does come back, there's just going to be more opportunity. And so volatility, if played correctly, can actually be a positive, not a negative.
Yeah, I know. It was really funny because I was reading the story and it said, oh, things are down. But then, like 5 lines later, it says, despite all that, most 401ks are still up 11% from this time a year ago. So that's what you're talking about as far as the
Yeah.
long game goes, right? Don't freak. And I'm always amazed too at how the markets move and react when somebody in a position to affect them just says something. Like it could
Yeah.
just be, we're thinking about this, and then boom, the markets. I don't understand them enough to know why people react that way, but when you
Yeah.
see this kind of thing, there's usually a good side to it somewhere.
You know what it reminds me of? I'm not an artist at all. Like my artistry skills stop at like stick figures. When you watch like a really good artist start a painting and it looks like nothing. And in fact, you can watch them for a half hour, and you just, as they continue to progress in what they're doing, it's like, this doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't understand kind of mid design, mid paint, whatever, like what they're trying to get done. And then they get to the end of it and you're like, wow, how did you make that out of that? How did you possibly have the vision to like start where you started and end where you ended and get it to be something that's beautiful? It just takes time.
Yeah.
And the markets are no different. And if you watch them kind of in the middle of the game, so to speak, sometimes it's really confusing, can be ugly, can be scary, can be a lot of different things. It's just, you got to understand the outcomes that you're seeking and play to your outcomes. Don't forget the outcome and the game that you're trying to play with the money that you have invested, and just play the game instead of just getting in, getting out, getting fearful, being
Right,
emotional.
and freaking out, right?
Yeah.
Number again is 952-522-3868. Your complimentary retirement consultation if you have saved at least $250,000 or more. It's just a phone call away at Fiat Wealth Management, 952-522-3868. We got to take a break. When we come back, Vanguard has just released its playbook for turning savings into retirement income. We're going to break down the 4 key principles there. And also, we're going to meet the retirees who are redefining what retirement looks like. That and more is still to come on Retirement Redefined with Fiat Wealth Management, with Brad Gotto and Fiat Wealth Management, right here on Twin Cities News Talk 1130 and 103.5 FM. Welcome back. Thanks for spending part of your weekend here with us. I am Bill Seller, along with Brad Gotto of Fiat Wealth Management, and recently saw a study. Brad, because it's what I do. I just read studies. A 47-year Swedish study finds that fitness and strength begin to decline at age 35, and I thought, oh, thank goodness, that explains everything. But there is good news. It says starting exercise at any age can still improve physical capacity by up to about 10%. But by 35, you're starting to lose out if you don't just keep working out.
It tracks. I feel like that tracks. It's exponentially harder every year you get older to, 1, not gain weight, and 2, gain the weight you want to gain. You know what I mean? The muscle and that kind of stuff. I watch my 16-year-old son eat garbage food and like lift weights once, and he looks like Popeye.
Yeah.
So,
gosh, I grew up as a competitive swimmer, and there, back in the day, I could go to a swim meet and then go to McDonald's and have 2 or 3 Big Macs and a couple shakes and never think about gaining weight. Nothing bad ever happened.
No.
Should have warned me about that in my 20s. Let me give you the number again. It's 952-522-3868. That is how you reach out to Brad and his team at Fiat Wealth Management. So one of the biggest fears retirees have is running out of money. We've talked about that before. You overspend and you could be in trouble, underspend, and you could shortchange the retirement that you worked really hard for. So Vanguard just put out a brand new set of research designed to solve exactly that problem. And they gave it a catchy title, Brad. It's called the Principles for Retirement Income. What are the 4 pillars? Is the name of the book or the study or whatever it is that's out there. And their first one is to find purpose.
Yeah.
When you head into retirement.
I almost want to call Vanguard and be like, welcome to the party.
Yeah. Have they been listening, by the way? I'm looking at these pillars and it sounds like what we talk about.
Yeah. They're a good custodian. I have nothing wrong with Vanguard. So don't, listeners don't take this, anyway in that regard, but they're not planners. So I perused the article because I knew that we were going to talk about this today. Nothing in there is surprising. Nothing's new. It's stuff that we talk about all the time, but they said finding purpose, covering essentials, make wealth last, and simplify. But of course, a lot of what they're going to talk about in the article is what I will boil it down to like rules of thumb. And the problem with rules of thumb, I mean, they're good, Bill, to kind of get you in the ballpark, right? Where you're just like, okay, I just need to get somewhere near. I'm a golfer. So if you're not a golfer, maybe this doesn't land for you. But if you really think about what golf is, hundreds of acres potentially, a tiny little ball, and you're going to hit it 400 yards or 500 yards and try to hit it in a tiny little hole. Like it's actually kind of crazy from a sport perspective. But like when you're on the green and putting, if you're 20, 30 feet away, my goal isn't to make it. It's just to get it within 2 to 3 feet of the hole so that my next putt can go in. That's what I mean. Like get it in the ballpark, get it so that it's makeable, so that I know that I'm somewhat reasonable in my expectations, whether that's the withdrawal rate of my money, growth expectations of my money, inflation expectations, longevity, whatever. You get it. Like all these assumptions that we have to make from a planning perspective. And that's a good place to start. And you get to these articles like this that talk about this kind of stuff, and that's usually where they go, is these rules of thumb, because they're talking to the masses. Great. It's definitely not the place to end. The problem with a rule of thumb, and one of the, they published the article because they said some people are underspending, right? Because of their fear and these sorts of things, they tend to not spend their money. We just talked about that in the last segment. And other people are overspending. Well, if you use the rules of thumb and you just kind of stick to the perfectly average, that's exactly what's going to happen. Is some of you that take these averages and these assumptions and work off of them are going to be underspending, whereas your neighbor working up the same set of assumptions could be overspending, because it's all the next layer is what's missing, which is the personal level of planning. Anybody that just uses a rule of thumb is going to pay for it some way, shape, or form. That if you're just going to kind of live in the broad assumptions of financial planning, you're going to somehow, some way pay for that. It gets really expensive because you're just kind of using averages. Where you really can do some damage in a positive way is getting specific planning based on your set of circumstances. Now, what's interesting to me, Bill, is psychologically, people don't like that. They like rules of thumb. They like averages. They like just kind of like, what's everybody else doing? And because we like to kind of go with the flow, like we're a little bit like sheep, wherever one sheep goes, the rest of the sheep go. Right. It's like, well, if everybody else is doing that, that's what I want to do, because it feels comfortable to me. And there are times in life where that is the right mentality to have. Like if everybody else is doing something, it probably makes sense for me to do it. Okay. But as long as you're going in the right direction, that you're in the ballpark and we're somewhere within these rules of thumb, the next layer is to make it specific to you. So using health as an example, of a rule of thumb says this is how many calories you should intake a day and this is how much exercise you should get a day, and that's generally positive, great. But the next layer would be, okay, based on my age, we just got to talking about this, right? Muscle loss after the age of 35. Somebody after the age of 35 that's just trying to be healthy has a completely different set of goals than somebody who's, 18 and trying to make it into, D1 sport when they go to college the following year or something like that. And so rules of thumb are great, not a great place to end. Great place to start, not a great place to end. And so I'll just give a specific example here, cash flow. They bring this up in this article. They say that they suggest 3.5 to 4% annually distribution rates off of a portfolio. $1 million portfolio, they're telling you can pull 35 to 40 grand a year comfortably, okay? Well, some of you, that's too much. Others of you, it's not enough. Not that you have to spend more, but you could spend more. We've got clients that take north of 5%, north of 6% a year. Because based on the assumptions, once we got into their personal situation, that's what's affordable. That's what makes sense for them. And you think about that, you got somebody that's pulling 3.5% off their $1 million. It's 35 grand a year. You got another person pulling 6%. That's 60 grand a year. Well, that's $25,000 a year difference. That's a huge deal. I mean, that's two really significant vacations that you're not taking. If you're just living off of a rule of thumb, when you're the person that actually could afford, based on your set of circumstances, that 5.5 or 6.
Okay. That makes sense. And I also know that when we do those little percentage things and I say, here's what they say about it, you're one of those who's not a big believer in that being an absolute for everybody, because it depends on everybody's personal situation, right? Yeah, you give me that same look every time I bring that up.
Well, that's because think about using rules of thumb in medicine. What if you went to your doctor and your doctor's like, well, normally in this circumstance, when you have this type of cancer, we just automatically do chemo. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to run any tests. We're not going to make the treatment plan specific to you. Let's just do what generally makes sense. any 99.9% of consumers are gonna be like, what? No, no, we're not doing that. Like if I actually have this cancer, normally it's treated this way, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes I don't even need to do that or this or whatever. Then let's run the tests and let's figure out a treatment plan that's specific to me, that I have the most chance or the greatest chance for success of beating this cancer. To me, this is the same thing. It's like, why in the world would you just take the perfectly average and go, yeah, let's just try that? That
Yeah.
is so costly. And in my example here, it could be on life experiences, fun and lifestyle, it could be financially, and the example I use seems extreme because you're like, well, yeah, Brad, you're talking about cancer and that could end your life. Yeah, but this stuff is, you're missing out on vacations you could be taking. You're overspending and now you're going to run out of money. You're going to be destitute at the end of life. You're missing out on return. There's just all kinds of things, generational wealth for your family. So yeah, that's why I get so frustrated by
Yeah.
these generic treatment plans, so to speak.
Which is what you will not get when you call the guys at Fiat Wealth Management. When you talk with Brad and his team of highly trained fiduciaries and you get that complimentary retirement consultation, it's going to be built for you around what you're hoping to do in retirement. It's going to be your plan. They don't have a plan they give to everybody. They sit down with you. They're going to talk with you, find out what you want to do in retirement, make sure you know the things that you will be facing in retirement financially, and then the plan comes together. But it all starts with that phone call at 952-522-3868. If you have saved at least $250,000 for your retirement, give Brad and his team a call. 952-522-3868. That's how you get that complimentary retirement consultation. We got a couple of minutes left here, and I guess maybe because I'm caught up in the World Cup and baseball's hot right now and all that, but for lack of a better phrase, retirement planning, it's more or less a team sport, right? But what happens, Brad, when you've got two players on your team and they each have a different game plan, right? We're seeing a lot more couples where one partner is ready to sprint toward financial security, the other one's still in cruise control, or one wants to go do nothing in vacation, like you said, and the other one wants to sit at home. What do you do to help clients build that shared vision?
Just tell them that the wife is right.
I'm laughing because it's true.
Yeah, no, originally when you started asking that question, what I thought you were going to be talking about is like the financial advisor and the CPA and the lawyer aren't on the same page, which that happens all the time too. You're just talking about the couple and then whether they have different visions for what they're going to do day to day, what their vision is for the rest of their life, what their vision is financially, like how conservative or aggressive they want to be.
Yeah, the small things.
Yeah. Not important. Yeah, it's very normal. Very rarely, Bill, actually, are couples equally yoked as it comes to their financial life. Usually you've got one of the two that's kind of running the money. Not that that's right or wrong. It's usually the way that it is. And then you have situations where you get to retirement, you get one that wants to go out and kind of live life and one that isn't all that interested in it. So we can work through those conversations. And at the end of the day, a lot of times what I've found is the person that doesn't want to do all those things or buy the vacation home or go on the vacations or go see the grandkids every month instead of, whatever, is because they don't want to spend the money because they don't think they can afford it. They're frugal. And, sometimes it is just they don't want to do anything, even if they aren't frugal. That's not their MO and their personality. That's different. But the majority of the time it's because they're frugal, and they're frugal because they think they need to be. And so one of the areas where we can help is what we just got done talking about, telling them what's actually affordable. I'll build whatever assumptions you want in there. You define for me what margin of safety you want in your plan, and then I'll tell you what makes sense. But if I can give them the permission to actually do some of those things, that's usually what one of the two needs, is the permission to actually go spend and to go live. Outside of that, it comes down to the one that wants to pour gasoline all over their investments and just go 90 miles an hour. And then you got the other one that, if they lose 1%, they Chicken Little and they think the sky is going to fall and all that kind of stuff. And so there's ways to balance that too. You can give them both what they want with different piles of money and make sure that you've built a proper foundation, that even when the big bad wolf comes, they've got a house full of bricks, made out of bricks. And so the conservative of the couple's fine and, whatever. There's ways to plan around that, but it comes down to that primary one, which is the permission to be able to spend and define what lifestyle can look like.
Gets right back to where we started the show today. And that all starts with the plan that you can have put together by Fiat Wealth Management. Your complimentary consultation, just give them a call. Go get it. Why not? The word complimentary, that means exactly what it sounds like. It's no obligation. Go talk with Fiat and see what they can do for you if you've saved at least $250,000 for your retirement. 952-522-3868. We've got people waiting right now to help you make that appointment and a chance to go visit with Brad and his team. So make the call right now. It could be one of the better things you do for your retirement. 952-522-3868. After the break, we're going to come back and talk about whether or not you should stay in your home or downsize. And in our final segment later on, the feel-good story of the week, retirees who are proving the best chapter might not be the one you're leaving. That and more still to come. This is Retirement Redefined with Brad Gotto and Fiat Wealth Management on Twin Cities News Talk 1130 and 103.5 FM. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we are back. You indeed have found us. This is Retirement Redefined with Brad Gotto and Fiat Wealth Management. And, just a minute ago, I kind of mentioned the World Cup in passing. Have you watched any of that, Brad? Have you been watching any of the
Very
games,
little, if I'm
very
just
little?
being very honest.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not watching a whole bunch either, but what I am seeing, I mean, I watched the USA team and that's about it. But
Yep.
What I am seeing, though, that I'm really enjoying is a ton of videos on YouTube of Europeans and soccer fans from around the world coming here and finding out what America is about and just watching their amazement at, first of all, like how big the country is.
Yeah.
I heard somebody the other day say that Seattle to Miami is the same distance of London to Dubai.
Yeah.
Think about it. That's crazy when you think.
Yeah.
But they get here, they see how big the country is and how friendly we really are. And of course, they also make fun of how big our portions are, but that's another thing for another. But they're loving it here, and I'm loving seeing that.
Yeah, it's been a lot. My favorite one I've seen is, and I don't know where in Europe I think he was German, actually. This guy was from, but he was like documenting his whole deal. And the thing that really blew him away was Buc-ee's.
Yes.
The convenience store, which is
Have you ever been to a
basically
Buc-ee's?
Walmart with gas.
Have you been to a Buc-ee's?
I have.
They're huge. Well, they got like 100 tanks, 125 tanks.
I don't know what
or
it is.
pumps,
It's
rather.
a lot.
Yeah.
But their MO, I don't know if like every store they build is like 10 square feet bigger than the last one.
Yeah.
Very on purpose. Like they always build the next biggest one, but it's not by a lot. It's like a foot by a foot or something more, you know?
But I've seen that. I think his name was Freddie from Germany. I watched that one too.
Okay.
He was amazed by Buc-ee's. Oh man. But anyway, I've just loved seeing all that as people come here and discover us for the first time. So, one of the biggest financial and lifestyle decisions that a lot of us make in retirement is what to do with your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Conventional wisdom says downsize, but more and more lately, retirees are pushing back on that. Some of them are right to do so. And I mean, my wife and I are close to that age, but we have that silly pre-COVID interest rate. So
It's
that's
not
one
silly.
of the reasons. No, but I'm just saying that's one of the. Well, it was ridiculous, but I mean,
Yeah.
in a good way. But I mean, how do you know which camp you're in when you're working with folks, and how do you help them solve that problem?
Yeah, we just don't use rules of thumb, Bill.
And we're back, everybody.
Conventional wisdom is a fancier way to say rule of thumb. You know, I get it. The thought process is, you know, I don't have kids in the house. We don't use much space anymore. So smaller house, smaller payment, lower taxes, lower expenses, that kind of stuff. Today, to your point, you might walk out of a 3% mortgage into a 6 or 7% mortgage, lower property taxes into higher property taxes, years of appreciation. Maybe you're above the exemption thresholds and now you got to pay taxes on that. Into a smaller home where you have like less to deal with. But because of that, you might have higher property taxes, higher insurance costs, HOA fees you didn't have before, stuff like that. So, and like I said, that higher mortgage rate. The bottom line is don't just assume it's going to be cheaper. But even outside of that, even before, like even if you walked in from one interest, you know, the same interest rate into a, you know, what you have now into a mortgage that was the same rate. The other thing I see, Bill, a lot is they sell the $1 million home and they buy $1 million condo. So even if, you know, other things are different, I just, it's not too often you see somebody sell $1 million home and buy $500,000 something else. It's not the American way. That's not who we are. Americans are really good at increasing lifestyle. We're horrible at decreasing it. It just is true. A couple things I would encourage people to really, really think about. The one thing you cannot buy is time. And so what I always encourage people to think about is wherever you live, no matter how much square footage is involved or not involved, is the total time it takes to maintain where you live. How much time are you spending just taking care of what you got? For some people, it's very little. They have condo lifestyle, townhome lifestyle, or whatever. And so all of that stuff on the outside is already taken care of. And I've got clients that not only have that, but they pay somebody to clean the inside of their house. So really, their maintenance, so to speak, is very, very little. I've got other families that's their whole life. Springtime comes, they live on the lake, they got to clean up all their property and, branches and replanting this and doing this. And then they mow all summer long and then, whatever. And then snow removal in the winter. And you really start to have this conversation with them and they realize that, 10% of their free time or 20% of their free time is spent just maintaining their house. And I'm like, well, at best, you maybe have 30 years left, 35 years left. Is that what you want to do? Do you want to spend 10% of the rest of your life maintaining your property? And a lot of people, when you put that on them like that, they're like, you know what? Now that you say that, no, not really. I don't want to do that. So then you have two choices. You downsize property to get rid of all the maintenance required to be in the one that you're in, or you pay somebody else to do it. You pay to have somebody mow your yard, remove your snow, do whatever, clean your house. And is that how you want to spend your money? Or would you rather downsize and actually truly downsize, not downsize into $1 million condo and get rid of all that kind of stuff? So I think time is a big one. So, and that's not one that a lot of people factor in.
Yeah.
The financial piece of it is big, but take the full picture. Okay. Don't just look at the cost of what what you get for your existing property and what you pay for the other one. We got to look at that full picture that I laid out before. And then the other encouragement, and I've said this on this radio show before, is I'd really encourage you to think about renting. There's just,
I was going to
number
ask
one,
about that. Yeah.
it's not as bad of an idea as you think it is financially in a lot of circumstances, number one. Number two, you're now not responsible for the property, right? You're renting. It's somebody else's. They have to be responsible for it. And so that can be a time buyback, but it can also just be a mental buyback of the pain and consternation of maintaining a property and kind of the weight that might put on you. But then the flexibility of it. If you think about these, kind of this retirement phase of life, pre-retirement phase of life, the idea or concept of being able to kind of move around with a little more ease of I'm gonna live here for a couple of years. I'm gonna do this for a couple of years. To some people, that's awesome, but they've never thought of renting. And so when you think about doing that, having to buy and sell homes again and again and again, they're like, well, no, I would never.
Yeah.
But if you don't have to buy and sell them and you just get to move, well, then maybe that becomes a reality. So there's just a lot. It's one of the largest assets, if not the largest asset most people have. And it's also where they spend their most time, is just maintaining property. And some people, Bill, admittedly love it. It's like their hobby, right? They love planting the gardens and taking care of the yard. And God bless you if that's your hobby and that's what you want to do, more power to you. But there's just a lot of people that are doing that stuff because they've just always done that stuff. And those are the people that I'd want to have these conversations with of what do you actually want how do you want to spend your time? How do you want to spend your money? Let's just make sure that those things line up with what you're actually doing. Because there's usually a massive delta or gap between this is what I actually want for my time and my money versus this is what I'm actually doing. And so how do we get those things closer together?
Yeah, I went the other way. My son manages a landscape company, so that's how I do my yard. So that's been kind of nice for years. So
there you go.
Got that going for me. Listen, these are all things that you've got to take into consideration as you roll into retirement. And again, some of this stuff, let me just put it this way. Almost all the things everything we talk about, Brad has seen, he's dealt with other people, and he's got good ideas. So getting in touch with him and his team of highly trained fiduciaries at Fiat Wealth Management is why we're here, to let you know that these are the things that they can help you with when you call 952-522-3868. And again, understanding all of this as you roll into retirement, it's going to make those years just that much easier. 952-522-3868. So we always talk about some of the downside of things, right? And I thought maybe we try to go with something that's, maybe let's look at some things that are going right. I recently read that American retirement savers are actually doing some things that are really good this year in 2026. Contribution rates are at all-time highs. Roth demand is surging. Yeah. Are you seeing that? I mean, with everybody you're working with?
Yeah. Again, maybe I should say this, but a little late to the game. Like, we've been doing this stuff for years. Like, not making the average American save. Like, we're not the ones pumping up the average Americans, because we don't work with millions of people. But the idea of putting more money into Roth IRAs and that kind of stuff. Yeah, the bottom line is where you save. We call this asset location. So where's your current savings going? And then where is your current savings at? Like, what the savings that already exists, where is it at from an asset location perspective? I'll give more clarity on that in a second. And then same thing with new money going in. Where are we saving it? Not just from an investment standpoint, because that's an important part. Don't get me wrong. Whether you're buying Apple stock, Apple stock or Microsoft, or you're one of the people that jumped into the SpaceX IPO, or wherever it is, from an investment perspective, but then also from a tax perspective. Are you saving in a pre-tax bucket, an after-tax bucket, or a tax-free bucket? And where are your existing assets? Are they pre, post, or free from a tax perspective? And is that the right place they should be? Because when you think about investing, people get really sensitive to fees and expenses. They're looking at their portfolio and what does it cost for me to be invested? What do these mutual funds cost, or these ETFs or whatever? And there's been kind of this race to zero for trading costs and stuff like that on all the big custodial platforms. And then they would look at their advisor, if they're paying for an advisor, and the labor expense that they pay for an advisor, and is that worth it? When in reality, the largest expense you have associated with your investments is taxes. It's the IRS. It's none of the other stuff. And getting that part of it right is super important. And so Roth IRAs, as an example, because you brought them up, they've been around since 1998. They've started to gain more popularity in recent years. They're now accessible in most people's retirement plans as well, Roth 401ks and 403bs and things of that nature. And what I guess the easiest way to put it, Bill, is that where you put your money, not just from an investment standpoint, from a tax standpoint, matters. And for some of you that are listening, not only should you rethink new savings, where from a new savings perspective is this money best saved? In a pre-tax type bucket, an after-tax type bucket, or a tax-free bucket. But with my existing savings, should I be remodeling a little bit the asset location side of things, like in moving money around? And so that's kind of this increase in not only Roth contributions, but Roth conversions. That was also part of that article. People basically choosing to pay off some of the debt they have to the IRS and move it to an after-tax, tax-free kind of growth. I call it kind of off the grid, so to speak, money. But you layer that, Bill, with this last little piece of like the Secure Act, which passed in 2020, and then they passed the Secure Act 2.0 in 2022. Although that was 4 years ago now, some of the provisions of that are just kind of now coming into play. They were staggered or delayed. And then you had the OB3 last year, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the OB3. Well, certain provisions of that went into effect right away in 2025, and now some more of them are coming into effect in 2026. And so the bottom line is the rules of the game from a tax perspective, which is your largest expense you have, taxes, the rules of the game are changing. So the average American is changing the way, some of them are changing the way that they're doing things. My encouragement to the listeners is if somebody changes to the rules of the game that you're playing, you should probably change the way you play the game. And so if you haven't sat down to figure out what all the new rules are, how they affect your family, and if that should change the way that, like this article is talking about savings, which is great, but just generically, change the way that you save, change the way that you're currently invested, change the way that you spend your money, whatever it may be, you should. I will just tell you anecdotally, for the majority of families that we serve here at Fiat, those two changes I just got done discussing, kind of some of the older provisions that were put in effect 4 years ago, and the Secure Act 2.0 and some of the stuff from the OB3, they are changing the way that we are planning on behalf of families. They're changing some of the things that we're doing mechanically inside of the financial plan to take advantage of the new rules to the game. And so if you haven't done that already and looked at some of these new rules and how it might affect you and if it should change things for you, I'd encourage you to reach out. It's something that we would love to help with. It's a super fun conversation to have to kind of get you back on track to play the game as efficiently as you can.
Your complimentary retirement consultation is exactly what Brad's talking about. And in there, you can find out if, does a Roth conversion make sense for you? If it does, how much should you convert? Get all those questions answered about that and what your retirement could look like when you get that complimentary retirement consultation. If you have saved at least $250,000 or more for your retirement, give them a call at 952-522-3868. 952-522-3868. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the question isn't just how much you've saved, it's what you're going to do with all that time. That and more still to come. This is Retirement Redefined with Brad Gotto and Fiat Wealth Management on Twin Cities News Talk 1130 and 103.5 FM. Okay. We're just going to kind of roll back into things here on this one. And we are back rolling into the last segment of the show already. Time flies when we get together, but we're so glad you're here. Let me give you the number again to reach out to Brad. It's 952-522-3868. If you've got questions about something you've heard on the show today, or, maybe you're looking to get that complimentary retirement consultation started, that's how you do it. 952-522-3868. We talk a lot on this show, too, about some of the big expenses people should expect, Brad, and one of those, of course, is healthcare. Healthcare costs in retirement are one of those top financial fears, and for good reason, I would think. But the problem isn't just that, costs are high. It's that I think people don't realize how much Medicare actually leaves on the table, right? I want to kind of pull back the curtain on this a little bit. What does Medicare cover? What doesn't it cover? And what's like a good idea to fill in those gaps?
Yeah, I mean, healthcare is one of those
about.
scary things, right? We all know that as we age, I mean, even if you're young, quote unquote, in retirement and you're in your 50s and 60s, that healthcare can get expensive. But we all also know that when you get to the end of life, it can be really expensive. And so there's just always that concern, especially because, prior to age 65, you've never been on Medicare. And so there's not a lot of people out there, Bill, that are studying Medicare in their 50s as an example, and be like, well, when I get there, I just want to understand, what it covers and how different it is, because we all get used to our employer-sponsored plans or, the healthcare plan we've been on for decades, and so we get it, and so we kind of know what to expect, and we just don't know with Medicare what it is or is not going to cover. Some people think it's got way bigger holes in it and covers a lot less than it actually does. And then other people think the opposite. They think it's like some sort of bulletproof, like the government's got it covered from here. Like I'll have no more expenses. And unfortunately, that's not true either. Medicare does a pretty good job of covering things like hospitalizations, physicians' visits, preventative care, lab work, a lot of procedures, not all of them, but a lot of procedures. What it doesn't cover is things like most dental care is not covered. Vision care, hearing aids, long-term custodial care, nursing home type stuff, assisted living type stuff, ongoing like home health aids that you may need at home. So it covers a lot, but I guess the best way to put it might be it doesn't cover a lot of your aging, and that's important to understand. Now, even inside of what it does cover pretty well that we got done talking about earlier, the hospitalizations, physician visits, preventative care, things like that, procedures. It's also important for everybody to know that when you get to age 65 and you file for Medicare, you're going to be Medicare A, B, and D. There's 3 different parts to it. They cover different things. And without getting too detailed about that, just know that even if you have all 3 parts, you are going to have to pay premiums. Okay. It's not all free. So you're going to pay for that. Your premiums are income adjusted. So if your income gets too high in retirement, Bill, they're going to increase your premiums. And so that's important to understand the details. Again, not going to get into the finer details of that. If you want to get into that, you can give us a shout. We'll go through that with you as well. But that once you understand what it does cover and what your premiums are, then it's important to understand what it doesn't cover. And if you need or want to cover in some of the gaps, I think of Medicare like Swiss cheese. There's holes. And there are plans out there, Bill, that are designed specifically to fill in the gaps or fill in the holes that what traditional Medicare doesn't cover. And there's really 2 kind of paths you can go down there. There's the original Medicare path, and to get a Med Sup plan. It's a supplemental plan that covers a lot of what Medicare doesn't. Now, it doesn't mean that you'll have zero out of pocket or zero copays, but it just covers a lot of those big kind of donut hole catastrophic type things. Or there's a whole different route you can go called Medicare Advantage. And again, without getting into the finer details, this comes down to one of those situations, Bill, where you don't want to be the perfectly average and just do what your neighbor is doing. What you want to do is go in and talk to somebody that is a specialist in this area and tell them exactly kind of who you are from a health perspective. Everything from, past health experiences, are you healthy today? What prescriptions are you currently on? Surgeries expected or had already, where you currently doctor, where do you want to doctor, like all that kind of stuff. And based on all that information that's specific to you and your family is going to determine what med sup plan you should have, or if you should go the other route with Medicare Advantage. But then once you've got that done, what you should know after that, Bill, is where your exposure is, at least on things like doctoring, physician's visits, lab work, procedures, things of that nature.
Right.
Because that shouldn't be an unknown. You should know that, like, look, as I go throughout this year, here's the premiums I pay for my original Medicare and any supplement plan or Medicare Advantage I have. And here's what my copays are going to be and my max out of pocket. And if I know those things, I can just plan on that, and there's going to be no surprise. Then we have to have the different conversation, which comes into things like long-term care. What if you need help getting dressed or bathing or eating or moving around the house and just all those sorts of things? Because Medicare, no matter how you cover it, what supplemental plans you use, that's not what that is for. And that's a whole nother massive expense we may have. And so then we have to have that conversation. And that comes down to what they call long-term care planning. And we have to decide, are we going to take the risk on ourselves and, fund that on our own? Or are we going to offload that risk to an insurance company as well?
I had a question. What if you are 65 and you are working and you like your job and you're not retiring at 65? Do you still have to report into Medicare, or
You do.
does that just come whenever you finally stop?
You don't have to take it, but you have to report into it. You basically just have to kind of file without taking, so to speak, or just kind of let them know.
And you can do that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. It's kind of like when I was 18 and I had to register for the draft. There was no draft at the time, but I had to tell them I was here. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, I just did this not that long ago with a client of mine who is still driving bus for a school. And the school has great health care. So
yeah, I'm sorry, but that's the other thing I saw a video about from one of the World Cup folks. They thought yellow school buses were only in movies in America. They didn't know they were real.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and now they come over here and see them everywhere, and they thought, we just thought that was a movie thing.
Oh, that's funny.
I've seen many videos saying that. So, sorry. When you said that, it made me think about that. Oh,
yeah.
952-522-3868. That is how you reach out to Brad and his team at Fiat Wealth Management. If you've saved at least $250,000 or more for your retirement, call for your complimentary retirement consultation right now. We've got people waiting to get you on the calendar. 952-522-3868. We only have a couple of minutes left here, but wanted to end today on a note that I think is going to stick with everybody, because a lot of people, the best part of retirement isn't the end of work. It's the beginning of work that actually matters. I've heard this from a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big movement of retirees right now who are kind of launching, for lack of a better phrase, encore careers, right?
Yeah.
Finally getting to do some things that they love to do and want to do, just really getting back to one of the first things we talked about today, and that's just simply having a purpose every day when you get up, which is important. Yep. But are you seeing this with the folks you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. The article that you're discussing, I thought was funny. They said one woman in community retired from a demanding healthcare career and now teaches lip reading classes.
Well,
that's funny. When I read it, I was like, man, I would love to learn how to read lips. That would be, can you imagine just being able to, from afar in restaurants and things like that, understand what people are talking about? It's probably better that we don't, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's
now
a
that
downside to that.
I'm verbally processing this with you and everybody else on the radio. But yeah, one of the coolest things about this is a lot of these people are doing this, not necessarily because they have to have the money. And maybe the money's nice and it provides a little bit of a different lifestyle, but it's not like paying for their toothpaste. You know what I mean? It's maybe fun money, or just they're doing it because they want purpose and they want something to do. The best part about it is, Bill, when you're at that stage of life, you get to do exactly what you want to do, what you're passionate about. And when you have something that provides identity and you're passionate about it all at the same time, there's that old saying, find the job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Right. Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff people are doing. I mean, that's really fun. It's really cool. And it's fun to hear, have clients come in and talk to us about what it is that they're doing, because it's like talking about their grandkids almost. They're so happy with some of the things that they've chosen, because it's not a money decision. It's a passion decision and a purpose decision. And so, and I think it's a really good idea, by the way. I love the productivity. And I think the happiest retirees are the ones that find ways to stay involved, productive, and part of society in general.
Yeah, I may have told the story here before. I don't remember, but my grandmother was the head of a nursing department for a hospital for like 40 years. And wonderful grandmother. Apparently, I wouldn't have wanted to work for her though. She was very Nurse Ratchet like in the office. But my point to that is she was in charge of something. She went to work every day, and then she retired, and we lost her in 3 years because she just sat
Yep.
down. So
Yep.
I firmly believe in the whole having a purpose thing and having a reason to get up every day, because I've seen it personally in my family. So,
Well, you can
this
teach
is not
people to
the
lip read, evidently. That's a
again.
new one on
I'm
me.
not
That's why I had
sure.
to bring it up. I'd never heard of that before.
Well, like I said, be careful when you're like in a working environment, because you might not want to hear what people are might not want to read what people are saying about you. But let me give you the number again to reach out to Fiat Wealth Management. It's 952-522-3868. 952-522-3868. Again, that complimentary retirement consultation comes with that phone call, and you can sit down and you can talk with Brad and his team of highly trained fiduciaries about all the things we've talked about today, right? Getting ready for retirement, understanding the costs that are coming your way, making sure that you're set up to go do the things you want to do, whether it's move near the grandkids, maybe travel more, buy an RV, whatever. You might want to just look into making sure you've got a plan in place so that the next 30 to 35 years, maybe they run a little more smoothly than when you don't have that plan. So again, the number is 952-522-3868. If you've saved at least $250,000 or more for your retirement, give Brad and his team a call. And with that, my friend, we are done, and we will talk again next week. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Thanks for listening, everybody.
This is Retirement Redefined with Brad Gotto and Fiat Wealth Management, right here on Twin Cities News Talk 1130 and 103.5 FM.